everyone, and welcome to our LinkedIn Live for the K-12 AI Infrastructure Program, which will fund AI infrastructure projects with the potential to deliver broad benefits to students and teachers. I am very excited to introduce our partners today, and they are Amy O'Hara with Massive Data Institute at Georgetown University, focusing on data governance and privacy. We have John Whitmer with Learning Data Insights, and he focuses on public goods, evaluation, diligence for reusability. We have Peter Bull with DrivenData with expertise in data science, AI, and competitions to support public goods. And we have John Gamba with Catalyst at Penn GSE with a focus on edtech innovation and the ecosystem itself. I am excited to hand it over to Jeremy Rochelle, Executive Director of the Learning Sciences Research Team at Digital Promise, who will give a broad overview of our program.
Hi, everyone. Super excited to be here. Thank you for your interest in this program. We're excited to be able to offer it. We're going to give you a brief tour of what this request for proposals is, and then we'll answer some questions. And I'll involve my colleagues, our partners that Pati just introduced. The way I want to share this is to take you right to the RFP itself and just give you a voiceover of some of its key elements. So I'm going to do that now. And one of my colleagues will put the URL for the RFP right into the chat so you can read along as you like. Okay, so here we go. Make the font a teeny bit bigger. There we go. And so this is the landing page that you'll go to, and you'll click Learn More to learn about this. Our first RFP is what you're reading about. It's due on March 8th. Our goal is to produce data sets, benchmarks, or models that will be public goods, openly licensed, to support improvements of AI in K-12 education, and our focus is formative assessment. And before going into the RFP proper, I just want to share that if you're not sure what we mean by formative assessment, there's a little companion piece off to the side. So you can click here, and there's a definition of what we mean by formative assessment, some ideas about what's in the space, the evidence for it, and different points of view, as well as some suggestions at the bottom as where AI might come in. These are not meant to limit it, just to stir your imagination and give you a sense of what it is we're talking about. Let me go back to the RFP. And so this is our LinkedIn Live, which we're doing now. It really starts here with vision. One thing that's really key about this program is it has 4 phases in our work, and some of it's our work with you. The first phase is we're asking you to respond to this request for proposals. After we choose some, we'll be working with you to make sure those things come out as good as they possibly can be. After you're all done producing your public good and putting it in our repository and other repositories as you decide, we're going to still be working on fostering adoption and use. And that use, in this case, is not direct use by students and teachers, it's uptake by companies, nonprofits that are producing products using AI. And so they'll be using the public goods you produce. And then we're finally going to be tracking the market impact of all of this. We think a huge opportunity in this space is for formative assessment with AI to take advantage of multiple modes. So that can include visual modes, it can include speech modes, and other modes by which students communicate, because it'll make more of students' thinking visible and perhaps allow multiple ways for students to participate and show what they can do and what they can learn. So that's a key element we're excited about. It's not well, it's required that you have some aspect of that in there. And then there's 3 principles in the work that we're looking for in our vision. We want to see ideas that are grounded in the learning sciences and that really help us operationalize learning sciences ideas. My colleague Pati will say a bit more about targeted universalism, but that's our way of saying we want to make sure we serve the diversity of students. who are out there. And we really want to support teachers. And we foresee in our vision AI as a partner for the teacher and not displacing teachers. Um, my colleague John will say a little bit more, John Whitmer will say a little bit more in a second about what are public goods. So I'm going to skip over this part, but these are the outputs you would be producing, at least one of these three. And it could be that you're producing a combination of them. The RFP is open to US-based applicants, and they can be both for-profit, nonprofit, university-based, etc., with one application per lead organization, and if it's a big organization per department. We really want to encourage because we think the best quality for educators will come out if you work with educators. So we want to encourage involving educators. We'll go into this a little bit more detail later too, but in this initial RFP, there will be later, second, third RFPs. This one has two tracks, a proof of concept track for a lower cost prototype that shows that you're really ready to rock on something bigger. So resolving some uncertainty, perhaps in the tool chain for producing a large data set or in the annotation process. So we're looking for proof of concepts that you can do something big and significant. And you may be in a position where you have, for example, an existing data set that if it were enhanced, could be a really great public good. And so that's track two, is enhancing something you've already got so that it forms a public good. Budgets are from $50,000 to $250,000. And this first cycle is for pretty rapid work. So after you receive funding, 6 to 12 months of work to do the work. Recommended start date is in June. There's more details here. Just again want to highlight it's due March 8th. You have until midnight, and there's a lot of details. I'm not going to go over all of this, but it's laid out. If you have questions, we will have an FAQ in which we'll publicly answer questions. In addition, during this session, if you have questions, put them in the chat in LinkedIn, and our colleague Gabrielle is monitoring that, and we'll try to answer as many of those questions as we can live during this session. Finally, I just really urge your attention to the review criteria for the proposals you're writing, and read this part really carefully because we will have peer reviewers who are going to be highly qualified, and they're going to read this section, and this is going to be their marching orders that they're going to give a score for significance. Why is this project important to K-12 students and their teachers and the market that develops products for that audience? Assets and capabilities. What do you have and who do you have on board that's going to enable your project to succeed? The project work plan, how are you going to get this work done on an ambitious timetable? And notice the word not just dissemination here, but release. We're looking very firmly for things that will release a public good of some sort. And so you have to have a plan to release something, not just talk about it at the end. In other words, your project has to have an output. And so we're just recommending that you organize your proposal according to these sections. These parts, this is more detail on what we mean by significance. And it has a question, a prompt for you to write to. The part in the dotted box are really just examples. They're not binding. We were trying to help you understand what we're looking for, but we're expecting people may not do exactly this, but may have their own example of what they're doing for any of these things in the boxes. So, and also notice this, and this is true throughout, we don't want to constrain how you write a nicely flowing, readable text. So these are guidelines for questions you ought to address, but you can change the order as you need to. And some of them you might be able to address very quickly. Some might take a little more text. It's up to you to decide how many words you want to use on the significance and all the other sections. So we talked about assets and capabilities. What do you have that's going to enable you people and things that will help you enable rapid progress? There's lots more guidance here. A project work plan. You want reviewers to have confidence that if you get the funding, you're going to be able to produce a public good. by the end of it, or demonstrate one through a proof of concept. And then finally, the release and dissemination problem. Um, Section. So suggest your attention to each of these, as this is exactly what our reviewers are going to be looking for as they rate your proposals. And so I'm going to turn off the screen share, having shown you all that. And I'm going to ask my colleagues to start coming on now. And there's the screen share off button. So John Whitmer, can I ask you to join us first and say a little bit more about what it is we mean by a public good?
So thanks, Jeremy, and thanks for inviting me. And we're really excited to launch this. By a public good, we mean the kind of tools and technologies that people could use to otherwise improve the AI applications that are being made available in the world. And so those could be things like data sets that are otherwise not available. For example, recently colleagues Caitlin Mills, Ryan Baker, among others, have released an mind wandering database, which includes privacy-preserving technologies that show pupil movement and mind-wandering information about students as they engage with digital learning platforms that can be used to figure out when students are on task or off task in ways to predict that. There are other databases that are also data sets that have also been made available that could be used in AI applications, whether those are for training or those are for testing purposes. Very important for the work that we all do is that those are private. Again, I mentioned privacy preserving, the rights and the data was collected ethically, and with this use either in mind or that use authorized for that work. But really something that goes kind of beyond the more general purpose, data that's available on the open internet and in many other settings. As you mentioned, Jeremy, this could be data sets that have already been collected. We often find that people have lots and lots of data, but haven't yet been annotated in ways that are meaningful. And often there's tools out now for doing teacher annotation or other expert annotation of data sets to find certain constructs, things like productive talk, persuasive talk, other kinds of educationally relevant behaviors, which could then be picked up by AI tools and data sets. So data sets is one example. That's one that's relatively, I think in many cases, straightforward. Many people have been collecting data, and you could enrich or improve on that data. Another is algorithms. That are made available that make predictions. I'm thinking of Astra AI is a technology or is a set of algorithms developed through a previous grant through the Gates Foundation that was developed and delivered that can predict math learning strategies. Deepak Venapal at the University of Memphis developed this using data from Carnegie Learning, and they can develop these more complex, higher level strategies that students are engaging in, and we're able to predict them very accurately. And they took that and they posted it on Hugging Face. As of yet, we know that applies to one set of applications, but that could be extended. That is an example of the kind of an algorithm that's being developed and was able to be used to find the higher level strategies rather than looking at individual math activity is another example of that. And the other, we also have benchmarks that are available, which really bring together a series of both data sets, specific tasks, and evaluation approaches that people could use to evaluate things, again, kind of richer education constructs that are present in a data set to be able to see, for this example, right, there could be a benchmark developed to identify a set of predefined strategies to solving either specific or general math problems. And I think really, the reviewers will look at the significance of that work, but also want to make sure we can take a look at that it would generalize beyond a very specific problem, hence the name infrastructure, something that could be broadened out further. Is that,
That's
Jeremy,
good,
is that
great,
helpful?
Don. That's great. And one key idea in it being infrastructure is, who does it enable? It enables a technical user. So we're really evaluating, will this help a range of other developers build better products for formative assessment than they could otherwise? We're not looking, and the contrast would be not really looking at if your company or your nonprofit is offering a product direct to students, that's the only route. That's really important here. It has to be something that enables others and with fair play. Okay, let me turn it over to, let's say, Patid, say a little bit more about what we mean by targeted universalism, because that is super important to what we're looking for here.
Yes, thank you, Jeremy. Our program is really committed to pursuing the universal goal of equitable AI outcomes for everyone in the K-12 ecosystem. And so what that means is pursuing targeted strategies that address specific barriers that are faced by historically excluded groups, and thereby improving the system for everyone. So we're encouraging development and testing for these populations as a core feature of the program to ensure that these AI solutions are supporting everyone equitably. And I'm going to give an example. So a project might cite, for example, the indicators for being classified as historically excluded or ignored under the Texas Education Agency guidelines, which include 13 criteria. Those criteria include poor academic performance, interactions with the criminal justice system, parenthood or pregnancy, and experiencing homelessness, among others. And so we would hope that proposals articulate how they are ensuring that their public goods reflect the needs of that community. And we also encourage applicants to partner with those communities themselves. So we are going to be hosting an office hours, and you'll be seeing this come up in your chat. So we'll be hosting targeted universalism office hours for prospective applicants on Tuesday, February 17th at 2 p.m. Pacific time, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And we will be posting more information and registration information for that on our website. So please check back for more information.
Thanks, Pati. And we're not really expecting that any one applicant is able to serve every possible group here, but it's important that you pick a group or some groups that you're able to serve well. And that's really key to how we're thinking about this. Hey, let me ask Amy O'Hara to come on board. We're so pleased to have you as a partner, Amy. Tell us a little bit about some of the data privacy, data governance things that we are all thinking so hard about.
Well, I'm excited that we're launching this project. And from our perspective, thinking through that data governance, there needs to be attention to privacy and confidentiality, even when you're sourcing the data. What could you use in your proposal? And then what are the right data management practices to make sure that you're embedding privacy all the way through as you're conducting your analysis, as you're testing various algorithms, making sure that you're considering the representativeness of your approach and the way that that's going to scale. And then, as Jeremy's pointed out, this project is really all about producing these public goods. And so when a public good is ready and it's placed in the catalog and you can come to the shelf and say, I'm going to use that one to test my approach, we want to make sure that those data sets aren't leaking privacy on any of the individuals or institutions from which they came. So we are here to provide any sort of assistance thinking through the data governance issues, data management, and also the privacy protection.
Thanks so much. It's awesome. Let me now it actually flows really nicely to Peter Bull, who can tell us a little bit about some of the kinds of steps that you might be considering in your project plan for how you're going to build one of these things. Peter?
Thanks, Jeremy, and hi, everyone. Very excited to launch this RFP. I think the most helpful way to think about this is to think about the life cycle of an AI model. And your public good is going to enter at some point during that life cycle. The start of that is with the data that you're collecting. So thinking about what is that input data, what are the modalities, who's represented in it, have we gone through all the steps we want for informed consent? Do we understand the licensing constraints around that data? The second one is how are we augmenting that data set to train a model of some sort? In some cases, that maybe we just need the raw data to do that. In other cases, this will be adding annotations or labels that models can learn from. And when you're doing that, how are you thinking about the quality of those labels that are being added to your data set? The next step in the life cycle is going to be actually training those models. And so some folks will be entering here saying, hey, we've got our data ready to go. We want to have a model that we release so that that can be used. And that will be the public good. That's the output. And then the final one is how are we evaluating these models that exist? What are the methods that we're using to do that? How do we create benchmarks if other people are creating models for evaluating this? What are the kinds of validity that our evaluation cares about? And how are we structuring that assessment? So that's sort of the AI model lifecycle. And you'll think about where your project plugs into that for which part of the digital public goods you care about. The second thing, of course, is the public piece of the digital public goods. And so I think folks should expect to spend more time in a project like this, really preparing what they're developing for release. And as Jeremy mentioned, that's one of the things that we're going to provide support for grantees. But the quality of the metadata that you provide, the amount of time you spend being really thoughtful about what's going to go out into the public is going to be a key part of what we really want to drive towards with this program.
And one thing we really wanted to talk a little bit before we go to questions is to go to John Gamba and talk a little bit about, John, why would companies, for example, participate in this? And one thing, we're clear about is this isn't venture capital to build the private product that you're going to charge money for to your customers or even release for free to your customers. It's about something that can be shared. And given that it's going to be shared with others, why might someone participate?
Yeah, it's a great question. We as partners spent a lot of time on this. Hello, everyone. My name is John Gamba from Catalyst Penn GSE. Our connection here is to really track market uptake and to assess the market on what is needed in terms of AI infrastructure for public good, and how can researchers, policymakers, developers actually lean in on this work. And one of the things we talked about, Jeremy, as you know, as a collective is why formative assessment? And I know a lot of people are asking that question. And we like to think we're tracking what students know. What can we do to intervene to support them, to help them learn more? And how can we assess that or evaluate that on an ongoing basis? And for those of you who are wondering, we don't care if that's math, STEM, reading, literacy, any scope of K-12 applications in
K-12,
the
yeah.
lens of formative assessment. But it was really important, and it's important that our audience understands how critical and how important we see formative assessment as the first step for this first RFP. Anybody can participate as long as it is intended to create models and data sets for the public good. So it is not, as Jeremy said, intended for edtechs, for instance, who are creating the next greatest ASR application. It's really intended to be for people who are developing AI infrastructure and AI oriented applications for the public good that could be used by developers of formative assessment products.
Okay, thank you. So now we are going to move over to our Q&A, and I want to remind everyone that our website does have a frequently asked questions section. So after you take a look at this recording, if you have any follow-up questions, please submit those with our contact form or send us an email to k12ai-infrastructure@digitalpromise.org. Again, this information is on our website, and any questions that come into us through these channels will be reflected on this Q&A website. So it will be kept up to date as we respond to questions that come in. So I'm going to turn to our partners. John Whitmer, I'm going to start with you. Can you please say more about the size or required impact of a public good and how that is measured?
Sure, thanks, Patty. And I'll echo comments that Jeremy made earlier, which may or may not have been saved, that while we would love there to be kind of a magic number or a target set, it really depends. The size of the data set, the capabilities and characteristics really depend on both on the significance of the question being asked and really what else is already out there. As someone I've been active in the measurement community for some time, the number of references, for example, to the Automated Student Assessment Prize, ASAP, that data set, and the number of models and tests that have been made is extremely high. And that's not something where you would need, we can use more diverse data sets representing more diverse groups of learners, more known about them in other areas. So it really does depend on both the kind of question that we have, but also what else is out there and what do we need to do and what are the characteristics. This well annotated data at construct level is very difficult to come by. Is very difficult to find and hard, to get a hold of to be used in areas and that aligned with learning science principles. We've been looking and don't see a lot of it out there. So, the size is no one's going to complain about a maximum size. I think the question we received is there like a threshold, that we can get. We'd love to have that problem, frankly, to have a data set that was too large. But for the most part, we want something that really would provide a meaningful input and gain on what we already have available. And I think that'd be the thing, both talking about the question and being familiar with what else is out in the field that people have access to. And I'd really recommend that applicants do their diligence because often, someone else may be trying to solve the same issue. You'll learn more and then also understand the unique value of what it is that you're proposing.
Thank you, John. Our next question I'm going to turn to Peter Bull for. Can you say more about who the end users of these public goods are?
Yeah, happy to. So, as mentioned, because we're talking about AI infrastructure here, we're targeting a technical audience that's consuming the public goods, folks that are building products or technologies, researchers that are trying to understand certain boundaries, how technology works in the classroom, all kinds of topics. And it's not just for folks that are making formative assessments. That would be too narrow. It's any AI model or public good that contributes to an AI model that could be used as part of a formative assessment technology and system. And so it doesn't have to just do formative assessment. I think we give the example of ASR models in the RFP that would contribute to how those formative assessment tools get built. And so that's the connection to formative assessment. It's not just explicitly for formative assessments.
Thank you, Peter. And John Gamba, I believe you have something to add here.
Yeah, to the question of is formative assessments limited to academic areas, or will you consider assessment mechanisms for things like durable skill building? We believe that durable skill building is an academic discipline. So just to turn it on that. And I would emphasize anybody interested in this RFP really look at Universal. The thoughts that we have related to equitable access, equitable experiences, equitable outcomes. When we think about formative assessment, yes, durable skill building, whole child development, trauma-informed practices, mental health, all of these interventions, MTSS, all of these things are in play in the K-12 sphere for this project. So do not think that we're just interested in the latest and greatest math application or math model, but really we're looking at a whole spectrum of opportunities in the formative assessment space to treat the whole child, especially those who are coming from underrepresented communities. So I hope that helps. And the targeted universalism is something that we take very seriously and people should read in terms of where we're going to look and where we think about how we're going to emphasize investments in this area.
Thank you, John. And I believe that I'm going to go next to John Whitmer for some information about licensing.
So yeah, I just wanted to add in that Peter mentioned that it's really important to think about the packaging and the way you would create the results and the assets that you'll create through the program. And one of the requirements also of the program is that we think through and that we apply commonly used licensing formats. And so we've made some suggestions and that are permissive in use, that allow the kind of adoption and uptake and don't limit people from using them. And so we're trying to do that in a way that doesn't require that you hire a bunch of lawyers or lawyers to do that, but can use things like Creative Commons by for data sets or other knowledge artifacts, Apache 2, or an equivalent type license that has that permissive use that's enabled through the work you do, so that we can use, and would like to use a standards-based approach in the licensing and packaging of the materials, but are not mandating that you use one particular approach because you may have preferences and existing practices, and we want to build on those and we want to encourage that use across the community. So just to mention that, I think it'd be important to take a look at that, and also in the proposal that you put together, to think about the way that you will distribute and to be explicit about that. We are not mandating the use of a repository, but we are mandating the use that you submit the infrastructure product you're developing through this, and then want to support the kind of a federated approach to that. And again, we're happy to talk more about that or answer any questions that people may have, and hope we make this to be as easy as possible while encouraging broadest public use.
Thanks, John Whitmer. And as everyone has highlighted, please thoroughly review the request for proposals that's posted online. I want to take the opportunity to thank our partners, Amy, John, and Peter. And now I'm going to turn it over to Jeremy to give us an overview and closing call to action. Jeremy?
Yeah. Well, I really want to ask you to tune into the vision that we're going for here, that if we took the principles that are in this RFP seriously, we could really enhance a teaching and learning process that has great evidence going for it, but isn't often implemented as well as it could be. And it's a hard ask to get all the way to great implementation. I'll give you another small example. I've seen any number of older existing products that give teachers a dashboard with some insight as their students. And I've talked to so many teachers who have said, that dashboard is not what really is helpful to me. Are there public goods that would help companies go beyond dashboards and having a conversation with the teacher about their students, or the best practices of how to have that conversation with the teacher, how to support them in instructional planning based on that evidence? Well, those goods might be used by lots of companies, because lots of companies used to use dashboards for this purpose. We are also have a lot of interest from some of the biggest companies building foundational AI models, and we've engaged with them. And they have learn modes and they have study modes, and these are coming along. So if you can imagine a public good that could be included in a foundational offering sometime in the future, that would be very exciting and is possible under this program as a kind of user of your public good, is that kind of user. So we're just super excited. We hope you read the RFP carefully, because a lot of work has gone into crafting every word. And do ask us questions. We'll answer them through the frequently asked questions section so everyone can see. And finally, Kanila, you're going to tell us about the timeline, or Pati?
Yes, I can jump in. Here's the timeline for this current request for proposals. We just opened it, as you all know, and the application deadline is March 8th, and we hope to have decisions back to you by mid-April. So that is the timeline. Again, please check back to our website for updated information. And we have these links here. We will also drop them in the comments. And we do want to share two related efforts. So we have the AIMS EduData competition. So please take a look at that link for more information on submitting datasets and research tools for mathematics learning. And Peter, I'm going to ask you to tell us a little bit more about the DrivenData ASR competition.
Yes, thank you. So we just launched a challenge to build the most accurate model to do speech recognition for early learners. So starting as young as age 2. And we've got data sets that we spent over a year collecting and transcribing that will be released after the challenge, the biggest data set for this kind of ASR that exists. Please come use it. Build models. You can win up to $120,000 in prizes in that challenge, and everything is ready for you to just get in there and build the best models. So if you're interested in that, if you know anyone who has skills to train ASR models, share it with them. And afterwards, this will be a piece that we're turning into a digital public good. And so this will be an example of the kinds of infrastructure that the broader program hopes to build.
Thank you so much, Peter. And thank you everyone for joining us, for watching this recording. Please don't hesitate to reach out to us. The information is on the website and in the comments. Once again, thank you to our partners. We are excited to see your proposals. Thank you, everyone.